This may look like an ordinary football field, but to the Hopkins Hilltoppers from New Haven, Connecticut, this is far more than a simple field. Sure, like on any gridiron, they hit, they run, and occasionally, as high schoolers do, they goof around. But when these young men were tested in the ultimate way, they responded with the biggest win of their careers. Doug Guilford, now a senior captain, was enjoying a breakout season last year as one of the team's running backs.
He's passionate about what he does. And the kid that you see on the football field who running around and making plays is the same kid who's in the classroom. He's tackling his work with the same type of passion. Doug is a genuine kid. If you know Doug, you know how he plays football, what type of student he is, what type of friend he is. That's what's great about him. That's what I love about him.
But Doug's success, both on and off the field, didn't come all by itself. He was guided by Coach Jordan Sebastian, the team's defensive coordinator.
But I know Doug and Coach Sebastian come from the same town. They're pretty good family friends. So it became pretty obvious to me when he first stepped on the field that him and Doug had this sort of connection that sort of went beyond coach and player.
It was a relationship. It was at times a brotherly relationship where, when it's off the field and they're joking around with each other, and it was great. But especially on the football field, it was as beautiful a player-coach relationship as I've ever seen.
However, in the spring of 2017, the team got devastating news about Coach Sebastian.
I finally heard the news that he was sick. He had cancer. I found out it was stage 4. And it was really sad considering he was so young. He's only 24 years old.
Unfortunately, on a Wednesday last fall, just 1 week after procedure to Coach Sebastian had been deemed a success, Coach Phipps gathered his kids in the middle of the field and did the hardest thing any coach would ever have to do.
I just told them, I said, look, fellas, Coach Sebastian's fight is coming to an end. And it's not the end that any of us want.
Everybody, I looked around me, we were all crying, tears were coming down my face.
We talked about the role that love plays on a football team and what that's going to do and how it's going to help. And we said it's all right to cry.
Despite the passing of Coach Sebastian, the Hopkins team had a game just 2 days later, a game in which they would be behind on the scoreboard at the end. However, in high school football, the final score sometimes isn't everything.
For me, on a personal level, I just looked around the bus and I looked at the coaches and I looked at the kids and I was grateful that I was here. I was here where I wanted to be in this sport that I love, with this school that I love, and these kids that I love.
In my 13 years of playing sports, I have never felt an energy, emotion so deep and so true and so real as I did that game.
Just a few short weeks after that game, Douglas received more devastating news, this time about his grandfather who was suffering from dementia.
My family made the decision with the doctors to remove the breathing tube from him. And we all knew, obviously we had hope, but we all knew, part of us knew that this may be goodbye. So leading up to that game, I was battling with that thought in my mind all week. My grandfather was such a big part of my life.
By the time the game rolled around on Saturday, Doug knew it would be his last game while his grandfather was still with him, so he decided to dedicate the game to him. And what a game he had.
But Doug was walking a little taller that day. Chest was puffed out that day. We were playing against a school with a really, really good running back. I think he was leading the state at that time in rushing. And Doug sort of said it as a personal message that I'm gonna be the best running back that day.
He'd write on his wrist, he'd tape his wrist up and he'd write, play for Pops on one of them and then Forever One on the other one. So he just kind of came out and I guess played for Pops is the best way to put it.
Put my head down, cried, and prayed. I was just asking for the strength to give my grandfather, the best gift I could ever give him, It's my final goodbye, and I did.
How did you play?
This is the best game of my career. 200 plus yards, 3 touchdowns, but it was all for him. It was all for Coach Sebastian,
Unbelievable. You think they were there with you that night?
without a doubt.
2 days after Doug's memorable game, doctors pulled the tube from Doug's grandfather, and as expected, he passed away. For Doug's sake, I wish this was the end. However, the very next day, Doug got picked up from school by both of his parents, something which never happens. They were there to give him one last piece of news, this time regarding Doug's other grandfather.
Looks at me, tears going down her face, voice breaking. D, your grandfather passed away. I looked at it with shock, like, you're kidding, like what? And she said it again. She said he had a heart attack. He died, and I couldn't believe it. Mad, sad, angry.
Even though Doug may have felt alone at this time, he was not. The football season may have ended 3 days prior, but Doug still had 30 brothers on each side of him ready to help.
One of the things I said to him is like, everything happens for a reason. You know, I know it's not fair. I know life's not fair. Nothing about anything is really fair. So I really just said, you know, you got to work through it. And he did. And I have a ton of respect for him for that.
What I said was like, as cheesy as it sounds, it just everything goes away with time. I was like, I know for a fact you don't want to hear that right now, because right now you probably just feel terrible. But the only advice I could give him was like, in time, you're going to get over it.
Football created such a strong bond with my teammates on the field. I call them my brothers. They do anything for me, I do anything for them. And just for them to be there in this time of my life meant the world to me.
As it sits today, the Hilltoppers are 3-1 in 2018 and are a potential playoff team for the first time in a number of years. The bond they forged from playing a sport on an ordinary field has undoubtedly helped their success this year. Doug continues to pay tribute to his fallen loved ones on his wrist tape each week. In just a short amount of time, Doug and his Hopkins teammates will be done with their playing careers. But due to their victories on and off the field, they will remain brothers forever. Peter Gumas, Sacred Heart Sports Media, New Haven, Connecticut.